In this video, we journey through 101 Zen stories, a remarkable collection of ancient koans and tales that carry the essence of Zen Buddhism, a path of self-discovery, spontaneity, and profound truth. These stories, compiled by Nyogen Senzaki and Paul Reps, invite us to step beyond the limitations of logical thought and into the vast expanse of direct experience. As you listen, may you find moments of stillness, moments of reflection, and perhaps a glimpse of your own Zen. Each story is a whisper from the past, a guide to understanding the universe in its purest form. A cup of tea. Nanin, a Japanese master during the Meiji era, received a university professor who came to inquire about Zen. Nanin served tea. He poured his visitor's cup full and then kept on pouring. The professor watched the overflow until he could no longer restrain himself. "It is overfull. No more will go in." "Like this cup," Nanin said. "You are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Finding a diamond on a muddy road, Gudo was the emperor's teacher of his time, and yet he often traveled alone as a wandering mendicant. One day, while journeying to Edo, the cultural and political center of the shogunate, he passed through a small village named Tanaka. It was evening, and a heavy rain fell. Gudo was thoroughly soaked, his straw sandals in tatters. At a farmhouse near the village, he noticed 4 or 5 pairs of sandals in the window and decided to buy a dry pair. The woman who offered him the sandals, seeing how wet he was, invited him in to stay for the night. Gudo accepted, thanking her. He entered and recited a sutra before the family shrine. He was then introduced to the woman's mother and children. Observing that the entire family was depressed, Gudo asked what was wrong. "My husband is a gambler and a drunkard," the housewife said. "When he wins, he drinks and becomes abusive. When he loses, he borrows money from others. Sometimes when he gets thoroughly drunk, he doesn't even come home. What can I do?" "I will help him," said Gudo. "Here is some money. Get me a gallon of fine wine and something good to eat. Then you may retire. I will meditate before the shrine." When the man of the house returned around midnight, quite drunk, he bellowed, "Hey, wife, I'm home. Have you something for me to eat?" "I have something for you," said Gudo. "I happened to be caught in the rain, and your wife kindly asked me to stay the night. In return, I've bought some wine and fish, so you might as well have them." The man was delighted. He drank the wine immediately and laid himself down on the floor. Gudo sat in meditation beside him. In the morning, when the husband woke, he had forgotten about the previous night. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" he asked Gudo, who was still meditating. "I am Gudo of Kyoto, and I am traveling to Edo," replied the Zen master. The man was utterly ashamed. He apologized profusely to the teacher of his emperor. Gudo smiled. "Everything in this life is impermanent," he explained. "Life is very brief. If you keep on gambling and drinking, you'll have no time left to accomplish anything else, and you'll cause your family to suffer too." The perception of the husband awoke as if from a dream. "You're right," he declared. "How can I ever repay you for this wonderful teaching? Let me see you off and carry your things a little way." "If you wish," said Gudo. The two began walking together. After they had gone 3 miles, Gudo told him to return. "Just another 5 miles," the man begged. They continued on. After another 10 miles, the man replied, "Return now," said Gudo. "I'm going to follow you the rest of my life," declared the man. Modern Zen teachings in Japan spring from the lineage of a famous master, the successor of Gudo, named Mu-nan, the man who never turned back. Meditation is the key to everything. Some people combine meditation with the use of essential oils for health and relaxation. Anyone can get essential oil bottles wholesale and learn how to make healing and relaxing oils from aromatic plants. Is that so? The Zen master Hakuin was praised by his neighbors for living a pure life. A beautiful Japanese girl whose parents owned a food store lived near him. Suddenly, without warning, her parents discovered she was with child. This enraged them. She refused to confess who the man was, but after much harassment, she finally named Hakuin. In great anger, the parents went to the master. "Is that so?" was all he would say. After the child was born, it was brought to Hakuin. By this time, he had lost his reputation, but it did not trouble him, and he took excellent care of the child. He obtained milk from his neighbors and everything else he needed. A year later, the girl's mother could no longer bear the shame. She confessed to her parents the truth. The real father of the child was a young man who worked in the fish market. The parents went immediately to Hakuin to apologize, ask for forgiveness, and retrieve the child. Hakuin was willing. In yielding the child, all he said was, "Is that so?" Obedience. The Master Bank's talks were attended not only by Zen students, but by people of all ranks and walks of life. He never quoted sutras, nor indulged in scholastic debates. Instead, his words were spoken directly from his heart to the hearts of his listeners. His large audience angered a priest from the Nichiren sect because his adherents had left to hear about Zen. The self-centered Nichiren priest came to the temple determined to have a debate with Bank. "Hey, Zen teacher," he called out, "wait a minute. Whoever respects you will obey what you say, but a man like myself does not respect you. Can you make me obey you?" "Come up beside me," said Bank proudly. The priest pushed his way through the crowd to the teacher. Bank smiled. "Come over to my left side." The priest obeyed. "No," said Bank. "We may talk better if you are on the right side. Step over here." The priest, proudly, stepped over to the right. "You see," observed Bank, "you are obeying me, and I think you are a very gentle person. Now sit down and listen. If you love, love openly." 20 monks and one nun, named Eishun, were practicing meditation with a certain Zen master. Eishun was very beautiful, even though her head was shaved and her dress was plain. Several monks secretly fell in love with her. One of them wrote her a love letter insisting on a private meeting. Eishun did not reply. The following day, the master gave a lecture to the group, and when it was over, Eishun stood up. Addressing the monk who had written to her, she said, "If you really love me so much, come and embrace me now." There was an old woman in China who had supported a monk for over 20 years. The blind men and the elephant. In ancient times, a group of blind men gathered to learn about an elephant. Having never encountered such a creature, they were eager to understand its nature. A wise man decided to let them each touch different parts of the elephant to describe it. The first man, who touched the elephant's side, declared that the elephant was like a wall, flat and unyielding. The second, touching the trunk, said, "No, the elephant is like a thick snake, long and flexible." The third man, grasping the tusk, disagreed completely. "The elephant is sharp and pointed, like a spear." The fourth man, feeling the elephant's ear, remarked, "You are all wrong. The elephant is like a large fan, wide and thin, fluttering in the wind." Each man, based on his limited encounter with the elephant, came to a firm conclusion about its nature. They argued loudly and stubbornly, each convinced that their interpretation was the true one. The wise man, observing their dispute, quietly pointed out that each of them had only touched a small part of the elephant. The whole elephant could not be fully understood from a single touch, and so each perspective was incomplete. The men fell silent, realizing the depth of the wisdom in the wise man's words. They had each, in their own way, encountered the same creature, but their limited perspectives had led them to different and conflicting conclusions. In the end, the truth about the elephant could only be seen by embracing all the different perspectives together. This story of the blind men and the elephant serves as a powerful metaphor for how humans approach truth and reality. It's easy to become trapped in our own understanding of the world, seeing only what we want to see and interpreting everything through the narrow lens of our personal experiences. But the world is vast, and so is truth. No one person can claim to have the whole picture, as we all experience life from different vantage points. In our everyday lives, we often find ourselves at odds with others because we are each seeing only a fraction of the bigger picture. This might happen in a workplace disagreement, a family dispute, or even in our internal struggles as we try to make sense of the world. We may hold tight to our own beliefs and interpretations, convinced that we are right, yet fail to realize that someone else's truth, though different from ours, may also hold validity. The story urges us to step outside our own narrow viewpoint. It challenges the idea that we can ever fully understand something based on our own limited experiences. Instead, it suggests that we must approach life with humility, acknowledging that our understanding is partial and that other perspectives may be just as valuable, if not more so. In the quest for truth, this means asking questions, listening to others, and being open to the idea that our perspective is not the only one. Just as the blind men in the story could not see the elephant in its entirety, we too can only comprehend a fraction of the larger truth. By embracing multiple viewpoints, we are more likely to approach a fuller understanding of the world around us. Moreover, this story invites us to reflect on the importance of collaboration and collective wisdom. If the blind men had worked together, pooling their insights, they would have realized that their individual experiences were just pieces of a greater whole. In the same way, when we come together with others, we can combine our diverse perspectives to solve problems, enrich our understanding, and achieve more than we could alone. The elephant's size and complexity symbolize the intricate nature of truth. Just as an elephant is a large, multifaceted creature, so too is truth layered and complicated. What seems true to one person may not be the whole truth, and there may be more to a situation than we initially perceive. The lesson is that truth is not always as simple as it appears, and it is rarely something we can grasp fully in a single moment or from a single angle. At a deeper level, the story also speaks to the human tendency to cling to certainty. We like to think that we know the answers, that we understand the way things work, but often our certainty can limit our growth. By holding on tightly to our own version of the truth, we might miss the opportunity to learn something new or see a situation in a different light. The ability to admit that we don't know everything is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it is a strength. It opens the door to greater wisdom and growth. When we acknowledge that our perspective is limited, we make room for new insights and deeper understanding. The elephant, in this sense, becomes a symbol of the infinite complexity of life. The more we try to define it by the narrowness of our own experience, the more we risk misunderstanding its true nature. But by stepping back and allowing others to share their experiences, we begin to see the fullness of life, the interconnectedness of all things, the richness of different viewpoints, and the beauty in diversity. This story also serves as a reminder that in our interactions with others, especially in moments of disagreement or conflict, we should strive for empathy and understanding. It's easy to dismiss someone else's experience as wrong, but doing so only deepens division. Instead, we can ask ourselves, what part of the elephant are they seeing that I am not? What can I learn from their perspective? We are all blind men in our own way, feeling only parts of the elephant. Yet, if we are willing to open our minds and listen to those around us, we can piece together a more complete understanding of the world. This not only enhances our relationships with others, but also allows us to grow personally and spiritually. Just as the blind men could not grasp the full nature of the elephant alone, we cannot fully understand life without the help and insights of those around us. Ultimately, This story teaches us that truth is not a singular static concept, but a dynamic, multifaceted reality that can only be understood in its entirety when we look at it from different perspectives. The more open we are to seeing through the eyes of others, the closer we come to understanding the vastness of truth, and the greater the richness we bring to our own lives. By embracing the lesson of the blind men and the elephant, we are reminded that life is bigger than we often allow ourselves to believe. It calls on us to challenge our assumptions, to listen actively, and to appreciate the wisdom that comes from seeing beyond our own limited experiences. The truth is far more expansive than we can imagine, and it is only by joining our perspectives that we can begin to touch the full scope of it. The Fisherman's Secret. Once, a Zen master approached a fisherman eager to learn the art of fishing. The Zen master, known for his wisdom in the ways of the world, thought that understanding how to catch fish would reveal more about the world's mysteries. He had heard tales of how fishermen seemed to possess an uncanny ability to commune with nature and get what they desired. The Zen master, curious about the secret behind their skill, asked the fisherman, "Teach me how to catch fish." The fisherman, who was a simple man, smiled and agreed. He invited the Zen master to join him on a small boat, and they set out to the river together. The river was calm that day, and the sun hung lazily in the sky. As they drifted along, the fisherman skillfully cast his net into the water, and with practiced hands, he began to pull it back in. The Zen master, eager to witness the fisherman's technique, watched closely as the net was brought in. But when the net was fully hauled aboard, the catch was not as plentiful as the Zen master had expected. There were only a few small fish, none of the large catches that the Zen master had envisioned. His brows furrowed in confusion, and he turned to the fisherman asking, "Why have you caught so few fish? Your technique seemed flawless. Where are the others?" The fisherman, with a calm expression, looked at the Zen master and replied, "You must let the fish swim freely in their own time." The Zen master was silent for a moment, processing the fisherman's words. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. The fisherman nodded toward the river and said, "The fish swim through the waters of their own accord, and they come to me when the time is right. You see, the more we try to force things, the more we risk driving them away. When I allow the fish to move naturally, they come to the net of their own will. If I chase them or try to control them, they elude me." The Zen master took a deep breath, understanding dawning on him. It was a lesson not just about fishing, but about life itself. He had spent much of his life grasping for answers, striving to make things happen on his terms. But the fisherman's words opened his eyes to the truth. Sometimes, the things we desire most in life come to us when we stop grasping and allow them to unfold in their own time. The lesson from the Fisherman's Secret is deceptively simple, yet it is profound. It speaks to the human condition, where we are often driven by the urge to control our surroundings, to shape our futures, and to force things into existence. We spend our time and energy striving to secure outcomes, pushing and pulling, manipulating circumstances in an attempt to reach our goals. But in doing so, we often create resistance, both within ourselves and in the world around us. Just as the fisherman's attempts to chase the fish would only make them swim further away, our efforts to control life can sometimes drive the very things we desire farther from us. The art of patience and non-attachment is about learning to let go, allowing life to unfold as it will. It is not about passive resignation or neglecting our responsibilities. Rather, it is about trusting the process, being present in the moment, and understanding that some things cannot be rushed or controlled. There is an inherent rhythm to life, and when we learn to move with it instead of against it, we find that the things we truly seek come to us naturally. In our modern world, where everything seems to be a race against time, this lesson is often difficult to embrace. We are conditioned to believe that success comes only through relentless effort, that we must always be striving, pushing, and fighting for what we want. From career achievements to relationships, we are taught to chase, to make things happen, to never give up. And while determination and hard work are important, there is a crucial element that is often overlooked: the power of patience and non-attachment. In many aspects of life, we may find that when we release our need for control, things begin to fall into place, whether it's in our careers, personal relationships, or inner peace. We often spend more time worrying about the outcome than we do enjoying the process. We want success now. We want love now. We want happiness now. But the true key to these desires lies in being able to let go of the urgency and allow life to unfold at its own pace. The fisherman's secret speaks to the importance of timing. The fish do not rush to the net because the fisherman demands it. They come when the conditions are right, when the moment is ripe. Life, too, has its own timing, and while we cannot control it, we can align ourselves with it. This requires faith. Faith that things will come to fruition in their own time, that our efforts will bear fruit when the conditions are right, and that we do not need to force them to happen before their time. In many cases, we are like the Zen master, wanting to control the situation, wanting to see immediate results. But just as the fish in the river must swim at their own pace, so too must our desires take their natural course. We cannot rush the seasons, we cannot rush growth, and we cannot rush the unfolding of our lives. There are things in this world that are beyond our control, and accepting this fact brings a deep sense of peace and liberation. This lesson extends far beyond fishing. It applies to every aspect of life. When we try to control our relationships, for example, we may inadvertently push people away. We might become overbearing, demanding, or possessive, all in the name of trying to make a connection. But true love, true friendship, and true intimacy are born from freedom, not from force. By letting go of our need to control the outcome, we give others the space to come to us freely, and in turn, we create more authentic and meaningful relationships. The same applies to our ambitions. If we are always chasing the next promotion, the next achievement, the next step, we may find ourselves exhausted and unfulfilled. It is only when we allow ourselves to let go of the pressure and embrace the present moment that we can achieve our goals with greater ease and satisfaction. The fisherman's secret teaches us that fulfillment is not something we can demand. It is something that we must allow to come to us when the time is right. Moreover, letting go does not mean being passive. It means being open. It means accepting that sometimes the things we want may not arrive in the way we expect or when we expect them. Yet, when we stop forcing them, we may find that what we truly need comes to us, often in a form we did not anticipate. Life has a way of delivering what we need when we are ready to receive it. The Zen master left the river that day with a new understanding. He had learned that the secret to catching fish and to finding fulfillment in life was not in grasping, not in controlling, but in patience and non-attachment. When we stop chasing, we open ourselves to the flow of life, and when the time is right, what we seek will come to us with ease. We may not always understand the timing, but we can trust that it is perfect in its own way. The fisherman's lesson reminds us that the most important things in life cannot be forced. They must come to us in their own time, and the more we relax into the natural flow of life, the more we find that our desires are fulfilled, not through struggle, but through surrender. The art of letting go is the key to true fulfillment. When we stop trying to control everything, we allow life to bring us the treasures we've been seeking all along. The Zen master's smile. Once, a young monk approached his Zen master with a question that had been troubling him for some time. The monk, eager to understand the true nature of Zen, asked, "Master, what is the meaning of Zen?" The Zen master, an elderly man with a serene countenance, looked at the young monk without speaking. He simply smiled. The monk, perplexed by the silence, waited for a more elaborate response. But the master said nothing, only offering that same silent, knowing smile. Confused, the monk asked again, "Master, what is the meaning of Zen?" The master repeated his smile. No words, just a smile that seemed to carry more weight than any spoken answer could. Frustrated, the young monk left the master and spent many years in contemplation. He pondered over the question, searching for an explanation, a definition, anything that could clarify the meaning of Zen. He read texts, studied under other teachers, and meditated deeply on his experience. But every time he returned to the question, he found himself met with silence, silent answers that only deepened his confusion. It wasn't until years later, after much personal growth and quiet reflection, that the monk finally understood. In that moment of realization, everything fell into place. He recognized that the meaning of Zen was not something that could be captured by words, definitions, or concepts. It was not an intellectual pursuit, but an experience to be lived. The true meaning of Zen existed in the very essence of being, beyond the reach of language and thought. It was present in each moment, in the simplicity of living, in the depth of silence, and in the mindful awareness of the world around him. The monk returned to the master, and this time, with no words to ask or say, he simply bowed in understanding. The master smiled again, a knowing smile, one that transcended the need for explanation. The smile was not a riddle to be solved, but a reflection of the monk's own inner awakening. The lesson of the Zen master's smile is one of profound simplicity. In a world where we are often conditioned to seek answers, explanations, and clear definitions for everything, this story reminds us that not everything can be captured with words. Some truths cannot be explained. They must be experienced. The nature of Zen, and indeed many aspects of life, is beyond the limitations of language. It is an experience that exists in the present moment, in the space between thoughts, and in the depth of our awareness. In our daily lives, we often try to articulate the meaning of things, to define them in terms that can be understood and communicated. We seek labels for our experiences and explanations for the mysteries that surround us. But Zen teaches us that the most profound truths are often ineffable. They cannot be neatly packaged into words, nor can they be fully grasped by the intellect. Zen is not a concept to be understood. It is a state of being to be felt. The Zen master's smile is a powerful symbol of this truth. It is a reminder that sometimes the best answer is silence, and the deepest understanding comes not from seeking more information, but from embracing the present moment with openness and awareness. The young monk's frustration, though understandable, was a product of his desire to know something in a conventional sense. But the Zen master, in his silence and his smile, offered a far deeper insight. That understanding is not always about gaining knowledge, but about letting go of the need for answers and experiencing life as it is. This truth is particularly relevant in our fast-paced world, where we are often encouraged to be busy, to be productive, and to always seek more. We are bombarded with information, and we are conditioned to believe that knowledge is power. But Zen challenges this notion. It asks us to quiet our minds, to be present in the moment, and to experience life without the constant need for explanation. It asks us to recognize that the most profound insights often come in moments of stillness, not in the pursuit of more knowledge. The story of the Zen master's smile also speaks to the transformative power of direct experience. It wasn't until the monk had spent years reflecting on the question and experiencing life through his own lens that he could truly understand the master's smile. The experience of life, its joys, its struggles, its mundane moments, is the key to understanding its deeper meanings. The monk's intellectual search for an answer was important, but it was through living, through being present, that he arrived at the truth. This lesson is not just about Zen. It is about how we approach life. Often, we look for external validation, for external solutions to our problems or for external sources of meaning. But the true answers lie within us, and they can only be accessed when we stop looking outside of ourselves and start experiencing life as it is. Zen teaches us to embrace the present, to quiet the mind, and to be open to what arises in the moment. The answers we seek may already be right in front of us, waiting for us to stop trying to figure them out and simply experience them. The Master's smile, therefore, is not a symbol of knowing something that the monk did not. It is a symbol of the realization that true wisdom cannot be captured by words. It must be lived. The Zen Master's smile was an invitation to the monk to let go of his need for answers and to open himself to the experience of life in all its forms. In the modern world, this lesson is often forgotten. We live in an age where information is readily available, and we are constantly encouraged to seek out the answers to our questions, to solve our problems, and to explain our experiences. We believe that by understanding everything intellectually, we can control and master our lives. But Zen teaches us the opposite, that wisdom comes not from knowing everything, but from being able to embrace the unknown, the mysterious, and the ineffable. It teaches us that sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the silence, in the spaces between thoughts, and in the simplicity of being. The Zen Master's smile is an invitation to let go of our need to control, to let go of our attachment to answers, and to be open to the mystery of life. It is a reminder that sometimes the most powerful answers are those that cannot be spoken. They must be experienced. The meaning of Zen is not something we can capture with our minds or our words. It is an experience to be lived, a state of being to be embodied. Like the Zen Master's smile, it exists in the quiet spaces of life, in the moments of stillness, and in the acceptance of what is. True wisdom comes not from knowing everything, but from embracing the mystery and allowing ourselves to experience the fullness of life without the need for explanation. The empty cup. A Zen master stood in front of his guest, a man eager to learn, brimming with questions and a deep desire for wisdom. The guest, though, was unaware that his mind was already filled to the brim, just as his cup was about to be. The Zen master, with his usual calm demeanor, began the ritual of tea. He poured the tea slowly into the cup, and the liquid poured steadily, filling the cup until it reached the brim. He continued pouring, and the tea began to overflow, spilling onto the table and dripping onto the floor. The sound of the tea splashing was sharp, yet it seemed to echo in the air like a deliberate act of teaching. The guest watched in astonishment as the tea continued to pour, creating a small pool of liquid that spread across the table. Alarmed, he finally exclaimed, "Master, the cup is full. You cannot pour any more tea." The Zen master, without pausing or reacting to the guest's outburst, continued to pour the tea, his face calm and impassive. Finally, he stopped and looked directly into the eyes of his guest. "Just like this cup," he said softly, "you are full of your own thoughts and ideas. How can I teach you Zen if you are already filled to the brim?" The guest was stunned by the master's words. He had come seeking wisdom, yet now he was being confronted with a harsh truth. His mind, much like the overflowing cup, was already full of opinions, full of preconceived notions, full of expectations and judgments. How could he possibly receive anything new when his mind was so crowded with his own beliefs? The Zen master's words were not just a gentle reminder, they were a wake-up call. It was not enough for the guest to simply want wisdom. He had to make space for it. He had to empty his cup. The lesson embedded in this simple yet profound interaction is one of humility and openness. The Zen master's tea ritual was not just about making tea. It was a living metaphor for the way we approach knowledge and learning. If we enter a situation, any situation, with our minds already full of what we believe to be true, then we shut ourselves off from receiving new insights. The guest had arrived with the desire for enlightenment, but his mind was so cluttered that it could not possibly accept any new wisdom. This is a common challenge we face in our lives. We all have our own ideas about how the world works, how things should be, and what we already know. We carry these thoughts, these assumptions, these beliefs with us every day, often without realizing how much they limit our ability to grow. Just as the overflowing cup could no longer hold the tea, our minds, when they are full, can no longer hold the teachings of wisdom. There is no room for anything new when we are so consumed by the old. The Zen master's lesson is not just about emptying our minds of negativity or misconceptions. It is about clearing away everything, every idea, every assumption, every belief that prevents us from being truly open to the present moment. We must create space in our minds to allow new experiences to enter, to allow new understanding to settle. Until we let go of what we already think we know, we cannot fully embrace what is yet to be discovered. In order to truly learn, we must practice humility. Humility is not about putting ourselves down or pretending we know nothing. Rather, it is about recognizing that there is always more to learn, that our current understanding is limited, and that we must be willing to open ourselves to new perspectives, even if they challenge what we already hold to be true. The guest's protest was a natural reaction. We all want to believe that we are ready to receive wisdom, but the truth is, we may not be. Our minds may be so entrenched in our own ideas that we are not able to see beyond them. Just as the cup could not hold any more tea once it was full, our minds cannot accept new knowledge when they are already saturated with our own preconceived notions. This idea of an empty cup is not limited to the teachings of Zen. It applies to all areas of our lives. Whether we are trying to learn a new skill, improve ourselves, or gain a deeper understanding of the world, we must approach the process with an open mind. We must be willing to admit that we don't know everything, that we don't have all the answers, and that there is always room for growth. But emptying our minds is not always easy. Our thoughts, beliefs, and ideas are deeply ingrained in us. We are often shaped by our past experiences, our culture, and the people around us. These influences create a mental framework through which we see the world, and it can be difficult to let go of that framework. To empty our minds requires us to challenge our own assumptions, to question what we believe, and to let go of the certainty we cling to. Yet, it is only by doing so that we create the space necessary for new growth. When we empty our minds, we allow the potential for new ideas, new experiences, and new perspectives to come in. The tea, when it is poured into an empty cup, fills the space entirely. Similarly, when we empty our minds, we make room for the wisdom of the world to enter and transform us. This is not to say that we should reject all of our previous knowledge. The idea of an empty cup is not about erasing everything we have learned, but about creating room for more. It is about approaching each moment as a blank slate, as an opportunity to see the world with fresh eyes, without the weight of our past judgments. In practical terms, emptying the cup means practicing mindfulness and awareness. It means being present in each moment, letting go of the distractions of the past and the future, and allowing ourselves to truly experience what is happening right now. It means stepping away from our mental clutter, whether it's worries, anxieties, or assumptions, and simply observing the world around us with curiosity and openness. When we empty our minds in this way, we begin to see things as they truly are, without the filters of our own biases. We begin to hear the world as it is, without the noise of our preconceived opinions. We begin to experience life not as a series of judgments and labels, but as an unfolding story full of possibility and wonder. In the guest's case, the master's lesson was clear. Until he emptied his cup, he could not be filled with the wisdom of Zen. But once he did, once he let go of his preconceived ideas and approached the master with humility and openness, he would find that the teachings would pour in as freely and naturally as tea flowing into an empty cup. The Zen master's simple yet powerful act of pouring tea teaches us an important lesson about the nature of learning. It reminds us that, in order to truly grow, we must be willing to empty our minds of the clutter that blocks us from seeing the world with clarity. Only by doing so can we be open to the wisdom that life has to offer. Whether in Zen, in our personal growth, or in our relationships with others, the lesson remains the same. An empty cup is a symbol of a mind that is ready to receive, ready to learn, and ready to transform. The bamboo and the oak, in a quiet Zen garden, nestled beyond the edge of a silent monastery, stood two trees, a mighty oak and a slender bamboo. To the eye, the oak was the more impressive of the two, tall, broad, and immovable, its bark thick and its roots sunk deep into the earth like the anchors of a ship. The bamboo, by contrast, seemed fragile. It swayed with the wind, its thin stalks whispering as they rustled with every passing breeze. Visitors to the garden often admired the oak's grandeur. "Now that is strength," they would say, "a symbol of power and permanence." The bamboo was overlooked, seen merely as decoration, pretty but insignificant. Then one day the skies darkened. Heavy clouds rolled over the mountains, and a fierce storm descended upon the valley. The winds howled like 1,000 spirits loosed from the earth, tearing at everything in their path. The rain poured in sheets, turning soil to sludge and battering every leaf and limb within reach. The oak resisted. Its branches stood firm, defying the wind, refusing to bend. But the wind was relentless, and hour after hour, it pushed harder and harder. At last, with a groan that echoed through the valley, the mighty oak cracked. Its roots gave way, and it toppled, crashing to the ground in a heap of shattered bark and broken limbs. The bamboo, however, danced. It bent low with every gust, its slender frame moving with the wind rather than against it. At times, it was nearly horizontal, its stalks pressed flat by the storm's fury, but it never snapped. When the storm finally passed, the bamboo stood tall once more, unbroken, undamaged, and still rooted in the earth. The monks emerged from their sanctuary and walked the garden in silence. They saw the fallen oak and the upright bamboo and nodded solemnly. One of them whispered, "Strength is not always what it seems." This ancient tale, told in many Zen traditions, holds a profound lesson about the nature of resilience. In a world that often equates strength with rigidity and power with resistance, the bamboo reminds us that true endurance lies in adaptability, to bend without breaking, to move with life's storms rather than stand defiantly against them. This is wisdom. Too often, we are like the oak. We pride ourselves on our resolve, our principles, our unyielding stance in the face of adversity. And while there is virtue in conviction, there is also danger in inflexibility. Life does not always follow the patterns we expect. The storms come, sudden illness, heartbreak, failure, loss. And if we have anchored ourselves so tightly to one idea, one identity, or one plan, we may find ourselves uprooted by the very force we were trying to resist. Resilience is not the same as resistance. The bamboo does not resist the wind. It acknowledges the force of the storm and yields to it, trusting in its own ability to recover. This is not weakness. It is a different kind of strength, the kind that endures, adapts, and ultimately survives. In martial arts, in business, in relationships, and in personal growth, this principle holds true. Those who are able to adapt to changing conditions are far more likely to thrive than those who cling rigidly to what once worked. Consider how this lesson applies to our everyday lives. In work, we may face unexpected setbacks, a lost job, a failed project, a change in leadership. If we define ourselves solely by our position or by one path to success, we risk collapse when that path is blocked. But if we remain flexible, open to learning, willing to pivot, we can find new opportunities that we never imagined. In relationships, rigidity often leads to conflict, the unwillingness to compromise, to listen, to shift perspective. These are the winds that uproot the connection between people, but those who can bend, who can soften without losing themselves, often build relationships that weather the worst storms. Even within ourselves, we often resist change. We hold on to ideas of who we think we are or who we were supposed to become. We resist the lessons that come from failure or the growth that comes from pain. Yet, like the bamboo, we are meant to evolve, to bend, to rise again. In Japanese culture, bamboo is a symbol of both strength and grace. It grows quickly, efficiently, and in harmony with its environment. It does not need to dominate other plants. It simply finds its place and flourishes. Bamboo's inner hollowness is also symbolic. It reminds us to keep space within ourselves, to remain open and uncluttered by ego, pride, or rigid ideas. The oak tree, by contrast, while magnificent, often stands alone. It demands space. Its strength is visible, but its downfall is in its refusal to give way. Many great leaders and thinkers have echoed the lesson of the bamboo. Bruce Lee famously said, "Notice that the stiffest tree is most easily cracked, while the bamboo or willow survives by bending with the wind." In Zen practice, this is not just a metaphor, but a call to action. Flexibility is not optional. It is essential. The bamboo also teaches us the value of humility. It does not stand tall and boastful after the storm. It simply continues to grow quietly and consistently. It does not seek praise or recognition. Its strength is in its nature, not in its appearance. This is the kind of strength we must cultivate, a strength that does not rely on being seen, but on being real. After the storm in the Zen garden, the monks cleared the fallen oak, making room for new growth. In its place, they planted more bamboo, not because it was easier to manage, but because it was wiser to honor the tree that knew how to survive. So too, must we consider the storms of our own lives. Are we preparing ourselves to resist them or to move with them? Are we anchored so deeply in our beliefs and our habits that we cannot bend? Or are we cultivating the quiet confidence of the bamboo, the knowledge that we can yield and still remain whole? The bamboo's lesson is not to abandon strength, but to redefine it. True strength is not found in the hardness of armor, but in the resilience of spirit, not in how hard we can stand, but in how gracefully we can move, not in shouting our truth, but in living it, quietly, consistently, and unbreakably. Let the bamboo be your teacher. Bend when needed, stand when the storm has passed, and through it all, remain rooted in the truth of your own adaptability. The sound of one hand. Clapping. There are questions in life that have no answers, at least not the kind that can be measured, labeled, or printed on a motivational poster. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Is one of those questions. It's a Zen koan, not a riddle to be solved, but a doorway to deeper awareness. You don't answer it with your mouth. You answer it with your life. Picture a monk, young, ambitious, spiritually restless. He kneels before his master and bows. The old man, with a face like a weathered mountain and eyes like still ponds, leans in and whispers the question. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The monk blinks. He nods. He returns to his mat. He spends the first day thinking, clapping one hand against a wall, slapping his thigh, snapping his fingers. Nothing satisfies. He spends the second day arguing with himself. If two hands make a clap, one hand makes what? A wish? A void? A metaphor? By the third day, he's angry. The koan mocks him. Every time he thinks he's close to an answer, it slips through his grasp like mist. He's shouting into the sky. He's pounding his chest. He's sure the master is playing a cosmic joke. But somewhere in the silence that follows his tantrum, something shifts. The frustration burns itself out. He sits. He breathes. He watches the light change on the floor. And in that moment, he realizes, this isn't about clapping. It never was. The sound of one hand clapping is the sound of insight cracking through the shell of your logic. It's the sound of your expectations being dismantled. It's the place between question and answer, where the need to label disappears. Zen doesn't give you answers. It gives you questions so powerful, they destroy the questions you used to live by. Let's pause here. What happens in your mind when you read? What is the sound of one hand clapping? Do you feel confused, irritated, amused? That reaction, that's the point. The koan is a tool to rattle the cage of your thoughts. Because if you always think the way you've always thought, you'll always get what you've always gotten. We live in a world of binaries, right or wrong, success or failure, winner or loser, this or that. Zen invites you to consider what exists outside of those categories. It asks, can something be neither and both? Can silence speak? Can stillness move? The monk comes back to the master. He bows again, but this time he says nothing. No answer, no theory, just presence. The master smiles. Because Zen doesn't want your words, it wants your transformation. In your life, the sound of one hand clapping is that moment when logic fails, but awareness rises. It's when you stop trying to control everything and just experience it. It's when you're stuck in traffic and instead of screaming, you breathe. It's when someone disappoints you and instead of retaliating, you understand. It's not about passivity, it's about presence. Think of your own mind like a clapping hand, always seeking another to make noise, to make meaning. But what if you don't need the other hand? What if the meaning is in the space, in the stillness, in the non-sound? Some truths are like that. They aren't handed to you. They arrive when you stop looking. They appear when you listen with more than your ears. There's a story of another monk who, when asked the same koan, simply raised one hand. That was his answer. The master accepted it. No words, no explanations, just gesture. Just being. Maybe you're expecting a satisfying conclusion here, a neat little bow to wrap up the paradox, but that would defeat the purpose. This koan isn't a math problem, it's a mirror, and whatever you see in it tells you something about yourself. So ask yourself again, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Then stop asking, and just listen. The flowering cherry tree. A student once wandered into the Zen master's garden with the kind of question that weighed on even the lightest of souls. Master? The student asked, his voice trembling with the vulnerability only deep questioning can bring. What is the meaning of life? The Zen master did not speak. He simply turned, walked silently across the stone path, and pointed at a cherry tree in full bloom. Its petals, delicate and glowing with the flush of spring, danced lightly on the wind. Some had already begun to fall, like pink snow onto the mossy ground. Life, the master finally said, is like this tree. It blossoms for a brief moment, then fades away. The student stood there in silence, at first confused. Then slowly, something shifted in his understanding, not in his mind, but in his being. The cherry tree had not given a lecture. It had not delivered a TED Talk, yet it revealed a fundamental truth, that life is beautiful because it is impermanent, like a flash of lightning across the night sky, or the final notes of a haunting melody. Its briefness is what makes it unforgettable. Many of us spend our days chasing permanence. We want lasting love, unchanging success, eternal youth. We fear change because it threatens what we believe we have secured. But the cherry blossom tells another story. It whispers in its short-lived bloom that transience is not to be feared, it is to be celebrated. Zen does not treat impermanence as a tragedy. It sees it as the heartbeat of beauty. Just as we admire the cherry blossoms, not despite their short bloom, but because of it, we are called to admire each moment in our lives, even as it passes. There is an ancient Japanese practice known as hanami, the viewing of cherry blossoms. People gather under trees with friends, food, and sake to watch the petals fall. They laugh, sing, sometimes cry. It is not merely a picnic. It is a meditation on time. No one clings to the branches, trying to keep the petals in place. They know the blossoms will fall. That is the point. In the same way, Zen invites us to participate fully in each moment, without trying to make it last. We are to hold each second lightly, to breathe it in, and then let it go. This isn't always easy. We grow attached to people, jobs, memories, even identities. But Zen teaches that clinging only brings suffering. Life is a river. It flows. To try and dam it is to miss its movement. To try and freeze a cherry blossom is to kill its essence. The student, months later, returned to the cherry tree. Its branches were bare now. Winter had stripped it clean. But in that silence, in that emptiness, he found peace. He understood now that even the absence of petals was part of the answer. In Zen, the absence of something is as significant as its presence. The falling of the blossom is not the end. It is part of the whole: birth, bloom, fall, decay, rest, return, a cycle. When we realize this, we stop being so afraid of goodbyes. We stop mourning the past as a loss and start honoring it as a season. A petal does not cry as it leaves the branch. It dances. Consider your own life. Think of the moments you wished could last forever. That perfect night. That sweet conversation. That brief period of peace. Now remember how those moments passed. Did they lose their meaning? Or did their passing shape their beauty? The answer is in the question. To live with the awareness of impermanence is not to be grim. It is to wake up. It is to look your loved ones in the eye and say, "I see you now." It is to hold a child's laughter like a fragile blossom, knowing it will change, knowing it will fade, and loving it all the more. It is to live not in longing, but in presence. In meditation, Zen practitioners often focus on the breath. Why? Because it is the ultimate teacher of impermanence. Each inhale comes. Each exhale goes. Try to hold your breath forever, and you will perish. Try to stop change, and you will suffocate. But breathe freely, and you live. So too with life. One spring, the Zen master called his students to the garden. This year, he said, the cherry tree did not bloom. A hush fell. "Will it bloom again next year?" a student asked. "Maybe," the master said. "Maybe not." The students looked at one another, unsure if this was another riddle. Then the master said, "Whether it blooms or not, the tree is alive. Whether it shows flowers or stands bare, it teaches. Even now it teaches." And again they understood. Just a little more. Zen does not chase meaning. It lets meaning arise. The flowering cherry tree is not an answer. It is an invitation to feel, to see, to be, to know that nothing lasts, and because of that, everything matters. So, the next time you find yourself clinging to a moment, to a person, or to a past that refuses to return, think of the cherry tree. Remember that life is not meant to be stored in a vase. It is meant to blossom and fall, and in that fall, to rise again. The moon in the water. In the heart of a Zen monastery, far from the noise and clutter of the world, a young monk sat beside a still pond. It was nightfall, and the garden was quiet, except for the soft rustling of bamboo leaves in the evening breeze. The moon had risen, large and glowing, casting a silver light across the water. As he meditated, the monk opened his eyes and saw the perfect reflection of the moon rippling gently on the pond's surface. The image was so vivid, so serene, it felt within reach. Compelled by its beauty, he leaned over and dipped his hand into the water, trying to touch the moon. But the moment his fingers touched the surface, the reflection scattered. Confused, he tried again, more gently this time. Still, the ripples distorted the image. Each time he reached, the moon seemed to flee. He grew frustrated. Why did something so clear, so present, vanish when touched? What trick was the universe playing on him? The next morning, he approached his master with furrowed brows and a troubled heart. "Master," he asked, "why is it that I can see the moon in the pond, but every time I try to touch it, it disappears?" The old Zen master smiled. "The moon in the water is not the moon," he said. "It is only a reflection. It appears real, but it is an illusion. The more you chase it, the more it eludes you." The monk nodded slowly, but the master wasn't done. "This is the way of the mind," he continued. "We chase joy, success, enlightenment, thinking they are things to be captured. But some things are like the moon in the water. You can see them, feel their presence, but the moment you try to grab hold of them, they dissolve." The monk lowered his gaze. "So, I am not meant to reach for the moon?" "Not with your hands," the master said. "Let it reflect. Let it be. Some truths are not for grasping, they are for witnessing." This moment marked a turning point in the monk's path. He began to understand that much of his suffering came from his attempts to control the uncontrollable, to possess the unpossessable. The image of the moon in the water became his daily meditation, a gentle reminder that some aspects of life can only be felt, never owned. Weeks passed, and the monk found himself returning to the pond often. He no longer tried to touch the moon. Instead, he simply watched. In doing so, he noticed other things: the way the wind subtly kissed the surface of the water, the dance of dragonflies at dawn, the way moonlight made even the darkest night glow. One evening, an elder monk joined him. They sat in silence for a long time before the elder spoke. "You have stopped chasing the moon," he said. The young monk smiled. "I realized it was never mine to catch." The elder nodded approvingly. "And so now, you are closer to it than ever." In Zen, the pursuit of enlightenment is not a sprint toward a finish line. It is a quiet, deliberate awakening to the nature of things as they are. The moon in the water is a metaphor for all things that tempt us with their beauty, but vanish when we attempt to own them. Love, peace, understanding, even the self. Many people spend their lives chasing reflections, the image of success, the illusion of control, the shadow of happiness. Like the moon in the water, these things shimmer just out of reach, and the more we lunge for them, the more elusive they become. The lesson of the moon in the water is not to abandon our desires, but to see them clearly for what they are: reflections of deeper truths, not the truths themselves. In stillness, in presence, in surrender, we come to experience these things fully, not by owning them, but by allowing them to be. This story also points to the paradoxical nature of spiritual growth. Enlightenment cannot be chased like a prize. It arises when we stop trying to force it. Just as the moon's reflection appears clearest in still water, wisdom arises when the mind is quiet. And so the monk, once frustrated by the untouchable moon, learned to live in harmony with mystery. He no longer fought the current or grasped at illusions. He let the moonlight bathe him, its reflection no longer a puzzle to solve, but a wonder to behold. The Master's Hammer. The morning was still, the kind of calm that wraps a Zen monastery like a silk robe. In the heart of the temple courtyard, under the shade of a worn wooden awning, a block of rough stone stood like a challenge waiting to be understood. Beside it, a young monk named Sota held a chisel in one hand and a hammer in the other, both tools heavy with expectation. His master, the revered Zen teacher Daisetsu, stood quietly at a distance, his hands tucked into the sleeves of his robe. His face bore the timeless smile of someone who had seen many students wrestle with themselves. "Carve a Buddha," the master had said simply. No instructions, no drawings, only the assignment and the tools. Sota squared his shoulders, placed the chisel to the stone, and raised the hammer. He brought it down with a loud, confident clang. From behind, the master's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Strike with intention." Confused, Sota adjusted his grip and struck again. "Strike with intention." And again. "Strike with intention." Each swing felt heavier, not because of the hammer, but because of the growing weight of confusion. What did the master mean? Wasn't he already striking? Wasn't that the point? Hours passed. The sun moved. The stone barely changed. The next day, Sota returned, his arms sore but his resolve firmer. He struck softer, thinking perhaps the master meant gentleness. Strike with intention. He struck harder, thinking perhaps it meant boldness. Strike with intention. He struck faster. Strike with intention. He struck slowly. Strike with intention. On the fifth day, exhausted and disheartened, Sota sat beside the stone and stared at it. He looked at his hands, calloused now, bruised. He looked at the hammer, its surface worn. And he began to wonder, not about the stone, but about himself. What was he trying to create? Why was he so focused on the result, on the statue, on finishing the task, that he had forgotten to even consider how he was going about it? That night, Sota didn't sleep. He meditated instead. In silence, with the tools beside him and the unchanging stone before him. He sat until the stars faded. When morning came, something had shifted. He stood up, took the chisel, breathed, felt the chisel in his fingers, lifted the hammer, not with urgency, not with doubt, but with awareness. And he struck. The sound was different. It rang clear and true, a resonance between stone, steel, and spirit. From across the courtyard, the master looked up from his tea and smiled. Nothing was said. Nothing needed to be. Sota continued, not rushing, not hesitating. Each strike was a conversation. The statue began to emerge, not as an image he forced, but as a form revealed, not sculpted by effort alone, but by awareness. Weeks passed. The stone surrendered, not to power, but to purpose. When it was done, the figure of a meditative Buddha sat where once only rough stone had stood. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't ornate, but it breathed. It pulsed with the presence of every mindful strike. The master approached, ran a finger along the edge of the chiseled robe. He looked at Sota, who now stood not as a student, but as one who had understood. "You have learned," the master said, "that even the hammer must bow to intention." That evening, Sota returned the tools to their place, but the hammer in his heart, the one that struck every thought, every act, was forever changed. The tiger's lesson. The monk hadn't expected anything extraordinary that day. Just a quiet walk through the forest to clear his mind, a routine part of his daily practice. The forest was still, save for the occasional rustle of wind through the trees and the soft crunch of dried leaves underfoot. Nature was speaking in whispers, and the monk was listening. But then, the whisper turned into a growl. From behind the trees, a tiger emerged, its eyes sharp, its body low, and its intentions unmistakable. The monk didn't hesitate. Survival kicked in before philosophy could. He turned and ran. Through the trees, over the rocks, his feet slapped against the earth in a desperate rhythm. The tiger gave chase, each stride closing the gap between life and death. The monk's breaths were sharp and rapid, his robe flapping wildly behind him, like a banner of fear. Then he reached the edge. a sheer cliff dropped into a deep chasm. Below, jagged rocks promised finality. The monk had no choice. He leapt, arms outstretched, and caught a thick vine growing from the cliff's edge. It held. Above, the tiger snarled and paced. Below, the abyss waited in silence. The monk dangled between two dooms, the predator above, the void below. His grip tightened on the vine, the bark rough against his skin. In that breathless space between death and more death, there was only now. And then he saw it. A strawberry, tiny, red, perfect, growing from a crevice in the rock just within reach. Its color was almost surreal against the gray cliff face. It seemed impossible, an offering from the universe in a moment of terror. He reached out and plucked it. With one hand still clutching the vine, he popped the fruit into his mouth. Sweetness. Real, bright, undeniable. A burst of joy on his tongue. And in that moment, the monk smiled. He wasn't thinking about the tiger anymore. He wasn't worried about the fall. For just that instant, there was only the strawberry and the now. It was enough. This parable, brief as it may seem, slices to the core of Zen. Life is a narrow cliff. Fear is the tiger behind us. The unknown is the chasm below. But in the crevice, often overlooked, is the strawberry. And the lesson. Savor it. Most people live their lives caught between anxiety over the past and dread of the future. Like the monk, we're always either running from tigers or dangling over cliffs, wondering what comes next. In doing so, we miss the moment we're in. We miss the strawberry. Zen doesn't promise to remove the tigers or the cliffs. It offers no escape plan, no miracle parachute. Instead, it points to the strawberry and says, taste it. Because even in crisis, even in chaos, life offers something beautiful. Mindfulness isn't a luxury. It's a lifeline. To notice the strawberry is not to ignore the tiger. It's to acknowledge that even in danger, there is something worth living for. That sweetness can still exist amid fear. The monk's power came not from defeating the tiger or climbing back up. His mastery was in presence, in choosing to taste joy in a moment where joy seemed impossible. We're taught to believe that peace only arrives when our problems are solved, when the tiger is gone, when we've climbed back up the cliff or built a bridge over the abyss. Zen laughs at that. Peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of clarity, and clarity tastes like strawberries. When we grasp this, we unlock a secret doorway to resilience. Life's pressures don't vanish, but they lose their grip on our minds. We stop flailing and start breathing. We see the strawberry growing from the rock wall of our stress, and we reach for it. It's easy to be consumed by fear, to make every decision based on what we're running from or what we might fall into. But fear is not a compass. It's a fog. The monk didn't find peace by eliminating the danger. He found it by stepping into the present moment so fully that he could taste it. And that, perhaps, is the greatest act of defiance, to be alive, even when life is trying to scare you into silence. Too often, we postpone joy. I'll be happy when the tiger's gone. I'll enjoy myself once I'm safe. I'll rest when everything is under control. But life is never fully under control. So taste the strawberry now. In every crisis, there is a crevice. In every crevice, a strawberry. In every moment, a chance to live, not just survive. The monk knew he might fall, but in that moment, he also knew something else. This strawberry, right here, right now, is enough, and sometimes that's the whole point. Summary. This section teaches us to find peace and joy in the present moment, no matter what our external circumstances may be. The Zen of gardening. A Zen master once had a garden so modest it would make even a bonsai blush. A student arrived one day, eager and bursting with questions about enlightenment. "Master," he said. "Please tell me the way to enlightenment." Without a word, the master handed the student a rake and gestured toward the garden. Confused but respectful, the student began tending to the soil. Days turned into weeks. He raked the leaves, pulled weeds, trimmed hedges, and watered the flowers. Still, his mind buzzed with questions. Finally, he broke the silence. "Master, I've been tending this garden for days, but I still don't understand the path to enlightenment." The master paused, then smiled. "And yet, the weeds are gone. The flowers bloom. The soil is soft. Do you not feel lighter?" The student stood still. He did feel lighter, less agitated, more present, as if the very act of caring for the garden had slowly uncluttered his mind. "Each leaf you rake," the master continued, "each flower you water is a piece of your own mind you are tending to. Enlightenment is not up there." He pointed to the clouds. "It's right here, in the dirt." From that moment, the garden was no longer a patch of soil. It became the student's teacher. He began to notice everything: the rhythm of the wind through the leaves, the way morning light kissed the dew, the silent persistence of the ivy. Every weed he pulled became a metaphor. Some were shallow, easily lifted. Others clung deep, requiring patience and strategy. Much like his own thoughts, some simple distractions, others rooted in fear and ego. The student began to see enlightenment wasn't a finish line. It was a state of being cultivated moment by moment. He didn't need a temple. The garden was the temple. He didn't need scriptures. The seasons were his sutras. He didn't need chants. The buzzing of bees was enough. He no longer asked the master for answers. He had become the student of silence, of soil, of subtlety. One day, another student arrived. He was full of theories and books and modern wisdom. "Master," he said confidently, "I've read the ancient texts, practiced the mudras, and fasted for 40 days. Tell me, how do I complete the journey?" The master smiled and handed him a rake. The new student blinked. "A rake?" The first student, now older, simply smiled and returned to watering the roots of a jasmine bush. Not with haste, not with ambition, but with complete presence. The new student didn't understand it then, but one day he would. The garden wasn't always easy. Sometimes storms would wreck a bed of blooming lilies. Sometimes aphids would eat away at new growth. Sometimes nothing would grow at all. But the Zen master taught, nature doesn't rush, yet everything is accomplished. It was in tending through difficulty, not just delight, that the gardener became the garden. And in that paradox, where hands meet soil and breath meets silence, Zen appeared, the wise old crow. In the rustling hush of the twilight forest, as the last golden rays of sun filtered through the canopy, a young starling flitted nervously among the branches. Curious and restless, the young bird had questions. So many questions. Why do leaves fall? Where does the wind go? Why do the stars speak in silence? But no answer ever seemed complete, and the more the starling asked, the more confused it became. So one day, the starling sought out the oldest creature in the forest, a weathered crow with feathers like smoke and eyes like midnight wells. The old crow lived alone in a gnarled tree that stood like a sentinel in the center of the woods. Animals came from far and wide to ask the crow for advice, for he was said to have witnessed 1,000 seasons and remembered each one. When the starling arrived, it landed on a nearby branch and blurted out, "Old crow, what is the secret to wisdom? Tell me so I can understand the world." The crow turned its head slowly, fixing one deep eye on the eager youngster. Then it said nothing, not a word, not even a caw. The starling shifted uncomfortably. Maybe the old crow hadn't heard. It repeated its question, louder this time. Still the crow said nothing. Minutes passed, then an hour. Leaves whispered. The wind sighed. The crow remained silent. Frustrated, the starling flew off in a huff, muttering, "What a waste of time." But that night, as the forest went quiet and the young bird sat alone under the stars, something strange began to happen. With no one to talk to, the starling started listening. It heard the distant murmur of the brook, the rhythmic pulse of wings beating in the dark, the hushed conversations of trees swaying in the wind. Even the silence had a presence, a fullness that filled the heart in a way words never could. Over the next few days, the starling returned again and again to the old crow's tree, but this time it did not speak. It simply sat and listened. One day the crow finally spoke. "Wisdom," he said, "comes not from speaking, but from listening. The quieter you become, the more you hear." The starling blinked. That was it? No complicated answers? No riddles or ancient sayings? But in that simple truth, a door opened. The starling began to understand things it had never noticed before. It watched how the squirrels paused before darting across the clearing, how the ants communicated without sound, how the sun and moon held conversations in light and shadow. It realized that wisdom wasn't something you found. It was something that found you when you were finally quiet enough to receive it. The forest was full of secrets, not the kind shouted from treetops, but the kind whispered on the wind, hinted at in falling leaves, and echoed in the stillness between heartbeats. As the starling grew older, it spoke less and listened more. Other young birds came with their questions, eager for answers. The starling, now older and quieter, would smile gently and simply listen. Eventually, that young starling became known across the forest as the wise one, not because it talked more, but because it had mastered the art of silence. And in the deepest parts of the forest, it was said that if you listened closely, not with your ears, but with your soul, you could hear the voice of the old crow riding the wind, reminding all creatures, listen deeply. Speak only when the silence has finished its song. Summary. In this section, the focus is on the power of silence and listening. True wisdom comes from understanding, and that requires space for reflection. The student and the master. A curious young student stood before his Zen master, eyebrows knit with the kind of tension only seekers of great truths wear. He bowed respectfully, then asked, "Master, what is the secret of Zen?" The master looked up from his tea, his eyes dancing with something between laughter and stillness. He sipped, then said, "There is no secret. You already know it." The student blinked, waited, and when nothing followed, he pressed on. "But if I already know it, why don't I understand it?" The master leaned in. "Because you are trying to understand it." The student blinked again. The master continued, "You're like a man trying to see his reflection in a pond, stomping, splashing, thrashing around. The water won't calm itself that way. Only when you stop trying will the pond clear. Then you will see." The student's mind went racing, as if trying to outrun the stillness the master pointed to. "So I must not think?" The master chuckled. "Try not to think. That's thinking." Frustrated, the student groaned, "Then what must I do?" The master finished his tea and held out the empty cup. "Let go." "Let go of what?" "Everything you think you know." The student frowned. "But what if I don't know anything?" The master smiled. "Then you're finally close." For days, the student wrestled with these words. Let go. Of what? Of questions? Of answers? Of his years of study, his stacks of scrolls, his mantras, his meditation schedule? The next morning, he approached the master again. "How do I let go?" The master was sweeping the leaves in the courtyard. He didn't stop. "You're holding on by asking that." The student sighed. "But isn't Zen about understanding?" The master paused, leaned on the broom. Number Zen is about being. He pointed to the leaves falling from the tree. They don't ask why they fall. They just do. The student looked up. The leaves floated without effort, without reason. The master continued sweeping. Later that night, the student sat by the river. His mind was loud, chattering, wanting answers, wanting peace, wanting, always wanting. And then he stopped, not with force, not with intention, just stopped. Let the thoughts pass like clouds. Let the questions hang without needing response. Let the breath come and go. In that space, there was silence, not the silence of absence, the silence of presence. He felt it. Nothing changed. Everything changed. The next morning, he returned to the master, said nothing, just smiled. The master returned the smile, said, "Now you know the secret." The student bowed. "But remember," the master added, "soon you'll forget again. And that, too, is Zen." The River of Time. The Zen master stood by the riverbank, his eyes observing the water as it moved steadily, never stopping, never changing its course. The students gathered around, their feet sinking softly into the earth beneath them, their breaths synchronized with the flow of the river. This was a moment of stillness before the lesson began. As the gentle current swept past them, the master's voice broke the silence. "Step into the river," he said, his tone calm and steady. "Let the water touch your skin. Feel the current as it moves around your feet." One by one, the students hesitated for a moment, then waded into the cool, rushing water. The sensation of the river's flow, swift yet soothing, filled their senses. The sound of the water flowing over stones, the ripples spreading outward, the light of the sun dancing on the surface. All of it combined to create a stillness that seemed to echo through their bodies. The master watched them with a quiet intensity, his eyes never leaving the students. "Now," the master continued, "can you grasp the river? Can you hold it in your hands? Can you change its course?" The students looked at each other, a mix of confusion and realization beginning to form on their faces. The water, they realized, could not be grasped, held, or manipulated in any way. It moved relentlessly forward, an unstoppable force. The river, like time itself, could not be contained. One of the students, a young man who had always prided himself on his ability to control things in life, raised his hand. "Master, why can't we hold the river in our hands? Why can't we make it stop or change its direction?" The master looked at the young student and smiled gently. "The river is like time. You cannot hold it and you cannot stop it. You cannot command it, nor can you change it. It moves on its own in its own rhythm, and it will carry you along whether you are ready or not." The student's brow furrowed as he listened, still not fully understanding the lesson. "But time, it's different. We can use time. We can make plans. We can control how we spend our time." The master chuckled softly, his voice laced with wisdom. "You think you control time, but it is time that controls you. You can plan and measure it, yes. You can fill your days with tasks and goals, but when the end of your time comes, none of those things will matter. Just like this river, time moves regardless of what you do. It will pass, whether you are immersed in it or not." The student stood there for a moment, processing the master's words. The realization began to dawn on him. It wasn't about controlling time, about forcing it to move in a way that suited him. It was about learning how to flow with it, to move alongside it. He had been trying so hard to command it, to squeeze every drop out of it. And yet, the more he tried, the more he found himself out of sync with it. Time, like the river, was a force that demanded respect, not control. The master's eyes glinted in the sunlight, as if he could see through the young student's thoughts. "Now," he said, "do you feel the water flowing around you? Do you feel how it moves with ease, without resistance. It does not fight against the rocks or the banks. It simply moves forward, undeterred, in harmony with everything around it. The students looked down at the river, noticing for the first time how it flowed without any effort. It was as if the river knew exactly where it was going, even though no one could predict its path. The water didn't rush, didn't fight against itself. It simply flowed, accepting its course with grace. The master continued, "This is how we must be with time. We must not try to control it, nor must we fight against it. We must learn to flow with it. Time will pass, whether we are ready or not, but if we immerse ourselves in it fully, we will find peace in the present moment." The student who had asked the question stood still, his feet now fully submerged in the river's current. He could feel the water moving, the gentle pull of the river as it carried him along. There was a new sense of surrender in his body, an acceptance of the moment. He could no longer deny that time was constantly slipping through his fingers, no matter how hard he tried to hold on to it. But in that moment, he realized he didn't need to control it. He simply needed to be in it, to experience it fully, to be present. "Master," he said quietly, "I think I understand now. I cannot hold on to time, but I can choose to live in it." The master nodded, his face soft with approval. "Yes, time is not something you possess. It is not something you can capture or hold on to. It is a river, always flowing, always moving forward. You can immerse yourself in it, or you can resist it. The choice is yours." Another student, an older man who had been silent up until now, spoke up. "But Master, what about the future? What about our plans, our dreams? Shouldn't we think ahead, make choices that will shape our time?" The master looked at the man, his gaze steady. "Of course you must make plans, just as the river carves its path through the landscape. But remember that the river does not force itself forward. It follows its natural course, embracing whatever comes its way. You too must make plans, but do not attach yourself to the outcome. Do not fight against the flow of time when things do not go as planned. Instead, let go and trust that the river will carry you." As the lesson came to a close, the students stood quietly in the river, each one reflecting on the master's words. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the water. The river shimmered in the fading light, its steady rhythm echoing in their hearts. Time, like the river, was constant, inevitable, but it was also beautiful, flowing endlessly, carrying them all forward. The master turned to leave, his footsteps barely leaving a mark on the earth. Before he did, he offered one final piece of wisdom. You cannot stop the river, nor can you stop time, but you can choose to live fully in it, to appreciate its flow, and to find peace in its passage. As the students slowly made their way out of the river, they carried with them the lesson of the river. Time moves, it flows, and the only true peace comes from being present in it, accepting its course, and embracing its impermanence.